we ready on technology? Ready to go. Are we ready on process? Ready to go. Are we ready on people? Ready to go. I would ask that the House consent to the tabling of this document.
Does the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary have the unanimous consent of the House to table the document? I hear some no's. There's no unanimous consent. Of course, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary knows that ministers can table documents should they so wish. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The Honourable Member for Nunavut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In my riding, there's a monument in Resolute Bay of an Inuk man looking out across icy Arctic waters. Many don't know, but this man actually faces another monument over 300 kilometers away, a monument of a woman and a child in Grise Fjord. Both stand as a tribute to those Inuit families that were split up and forcibly relocated by the federal government in the 1950s. Mr. Speaker, I know I don't need to explain to this House that Canada's history with Inuit is not always pretty. Although recognizing the mistakes in our past is difficult for many, I believe that these tragic acts must serve as a lesson for the future and should never be forgotten or repeated. Canada's National Historic Sites are areas that tell a unique story about our history. Mr. Speaker, I believe the locations in Resolute Bay and Grise Fjord, where they were left on the beach, tells a unique story and should both be National Historic Sites. I and the residents feel this designation is the least we can do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Thunder Bay, Rainy River.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to speak about Sir Winston Churchill Collegiate and Vocational Institute in Thunder Bay, which will be closing in June of this year after 52 exceptional years. Since 1966, Churchill has been providing high school students in northwestern Ontario with a top quality education and a huge range of extracurriculars. Earlier this year, the boys football team, the Trojans, brought home the OSSA Northern Bowl Championship, while the boys volleyball team went on to win the Nuwasa tournament and went on to play the best teams in all of Ontario. These are huge accomplishments, Mr. Speaker, but are just two on a list of many. I was just at Churchill last week, and I was honored to be there in person to thank the teachers, administrators, volunteers, support staff, and students for all they have given to our community. You've made Thunder Bay and indeed all of Northwestern Ontario proud. Thank you. Merci.
The Honourable Member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Mr. Speaker, as chair of the Canada-Azerbaijan Friendship Group, I rise today so that we may collectively pay our respects to the civilians who lost their lives during the Kajoli tragedy in the broader Nagorno-Karabakh War. It has been nearly 26 years since this tragic loss of life occurred, and I invite the House to reflect on the consequences when nations abandon reason and diplomacy and resort to violence and war to resolve disagreements. The history of innocent civilians caught up in armed conflict is heartbreakingly a long one. The distinction between combatant and civilian can be complicated. However, this does not discharge governments from their duty to protect the innocent. As a nation of peace, Canada has a vital role in helping nations like Azerbaijan and Armenia resolve their disputes. The Nagorno-Karabakh War region remains a fractured one where people still live under the daily threat of renewed conflict. I therefore invite my colleagues, in the name of humanity and in memory of the innocent lives lost, to help promote peaceful relations between the people of Azerbaijan and Armenia.
The Honourable Member for St. John Rothsay.
Mr. Speaker, as the home of Canada's third busiest port and Eastern Canada's largest port by volume, St. John is the beating industrial heart of the New Brunswick economy. The Port of St. John is a diverse cargo base, handling an average of 28 million tons annually. With global connections to 500 ports worldwide, the Port of St. John has easy access to central Canadian inland markets by rail and road. I'm proud to say our government recognizes this, and that's why it has invested over $68 million in infrastructure improvements for the port that will ensure its long-term viability and competitiveness. I would like to commend Port President and CEO Jim Quinn for his tremendous leadership in advocating for this project. This investment will create thousands of well-paying jobs in my riding in the near and long term. This project will be truly transformative for St. John Rothsay. Investments like this are key to strong economic development, helping to eradicate poverty in my riding. This is what real change looks like. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, as an MP for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert in Ottawa, I must say that I sense a kind of contempt for Quebec in this building. Last week, official sources said in a press release that the Prime Minister, during his costume pageant in India, said he dealt with a problem of separatists in Quebec, and that he'd fought the dangers of sovereigntist violence. What a disgrace. This same Prime Minister, who, with the complicit silence of Conservatives and Liberals, spent 2 weeks ignoring the consensus of Quebecers on tax inequity, Netflix, and culture. He takes Quebecers for a bunch of rubes and hicks. Now, we know that quiet nationalism is a matter of consensus in the National Assembly. It is our duty to represent Quebecers in Ottawa and the Quebec nation, and this independently of personal or political convictions. If this has meaning for you, then take a stand for Quebec. This is more than ever the responsibility of all Quebec MPs.
Mr. Speaker, BC's Team Tardy will represent Canada for their second time at the World Junior Curling Championships happening in Aberdeen, Scotland from March 3rd to 10th. This honour comes after winning the Canadian Men's Junior Curling Championships in Shawinigan, Quebec in January. Team Tardy consists of skip Tyler Tardy, third Sterling Middleton, second Jordan Tardy, lead Zachariah Curtis, and coach Paul Tardy. During Canadians, Team Tardy was one loss away from elimination but scored a victory over Northern Ontario in its final round-robin game. The team then beat Alberta and Manitoba to secure a spot in the finals. In the championship match, our boys stole single points in the first two ends and took a deuce in the fourth. 3 points in the eighth proved to be the decisive blow to Northern Ontario, ending 8-4. Colleagues, as all good curlers say, please hurry! Hurry hard! And join me in wishing Team Tardy all the best at World Juniors. Thank you.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Olympic Winter Games has come to a close. The Olympic journey continues for many athletes competing in the Paralympic Winter Games commencing March 8th. And Wallacestown, Ontario will be represented at the Games in South Korea. 17-year-old James Dunn will be leaving this week to compete in sledge hockey representing Canada. This story has a happy ending, but hard work and determination is truly what this story is about. In 2011, James was diagnosed with cancer and had part of his leg amputated. In 2012, cancer spread to his chest, but now, 5 years later, he is cancer-free. His determination and inner strength is what took a young man who started playing ice hockey at age 6 to jumping on a sledge while he was still having treatment at someone in the hospital and mentored it to him. James is the youngest member of the 2018 Canadian Paralympic sledge hockey team. Last week at West Elgin Secondary School, the community had an official send-off for this amazing young man. James, from all the residents of Elgin, Middlesex, London, and your friends and family from Dutton, Dunwich, we wish you all the best. Go for the gold.
Yeah.
The honourable member for King Vaughan.
Mr. Speaker, March is Developmental Disabilities Month, and to kick it off, RENA Community Residents Team, the Intentional Community Consortium, and Community Living Toronto are holding a reception tonight to share with us their plans to increase housing and supports for those with developmental disabilities. Last November, our government announced a national housing strategy with a priority of helping the most vulnerable Canadians access safe and affordable housing. As a result of this new strategy, communities will be able to access funding to build units across the country for people with developmental disabilities. I've had several opportunities to visit RENA community residents in my riding. They provide housing, employment services, and a vibrant community for adults and seniors with a range of special needs, such as developmental, physical, and/or mental health. I invite everyone to join me tonight in the Speaker's Lounge from 5 to 7 to meet with the representatives doing transformative work in our communities supporting those with developmental disabilities. Thank you.
The honourable member for Eglinton Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is a privilege to pay homage to Black History Month and Black Canadian leaders across the country who have contributed so much to a proud and essential part of our heritage. One such Canadian is Kay Livingston. Always with her heart focused on others, Kay was a renowned actress, journalist, and community activist who helped found the Congress of Black Women for Canada. Quoi que ce soit dans son travail avec...
Whether it was in her work with the Black Women's Congress of Canada, her career in broadcasting, her work with the Privy Council, and many other organizations that she was affiliated with, Kay Livingston was a pioneer.
To unveil a Canada Post stamp as well as an historic plaque in Kay's honour. That plaque now rests in my neighbourhood. In every aspect of life,
Kay broke down barriers, treated people with respect, and promoted equality for all. As Black History Month comes to a conclusion, her contribution as a woman, as a member of the Black community, is truly something to celebrate.
The member for Huron, Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to share the story of local hockey player and mental health advocate Kendra Fisher. Kendra grew up in Kincardine, played minor hockey there, and made it all the way to Team Canada's Olympic program. Issues with mental health ended her dreams of Olympic gold, but with strong family support and true Bruce County grit, Kendra made a comeback to win numerous medals playing in the Women's Inline World Championship. In her own words, Kendra best describes life since being diagnosed with mental illness. It has been 12 years since I chose life. I didn't cure it. My mental illness isn't gone. It's as much a part of me as being a goalie, a wife, a daughter, a sister, a mother, a professional speaker. Kendra now shares her story to help end the stigma surrounding mental illness with her organization, Mentally Fit. Thank you, Kendra, for sharing your story. She chose life, and you can too. God bless.
Honourable member for St. Margaret's, South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to talk about the inspiring fishers in my riding of South Shore St. Margaret's and the Live Well Challenge. The Live Well Challenge was created by Captain Todd Newell of Cape Sable Island as an effort to raise money to help families of the tragic fire in Pubnico Head, where 4 children lost their lives. Todd challenged other captains to follow his lead by jumping into the icy cold waters of the wells in their boats and donating $1,000 to local charities of their choice. The challenge has raised almost $900,000 and counting, with participants jumping into their live lobster holding tanks or even doing backflips off the stern of their boats into the harbor. Thank you to all of those involved, and to Captain Newell, I accept the challenge and I look forward to my jump in the freezing water.
The Honourable Member for Marc-Aurèle Fortin. Mr. Speaker, on February 12th, more than 75 medical students from all over Canada came to Parliament Hill to meet with MPs in order to discuss support for the mental well-being of Indigenous populations, especially given that there are enormous disparities in mental health and that there are alarming suicide rates. These medical students are asking for greater self-determination for Indigenous communities in the way in which financial support is used. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate the Canadian Federation of Medical Students for its work and its support of this very important issue, and this in cooperation with Indigenous communities. This is an issue that deserves to be studied and debated, and student involvement is an important aspect of steps forward in this cause. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister is always talking about his respect for diversity, but once again, he's not putting his money where his mouth is. This summer, he only supported those groups that would endorse liberal stances. And people were not allowed liberty of thought, liberty of conscience. People in our country should have the right to present a request for government aid without thinking that they'll be rejected because they have values or beliefs that are contrary to liberal dogma. Will the Prime Minister remove this requirement? Because this should be a program to create jobs, not an ideological propaganda tool.
For London North Centre.
Mr. Speaker, I stand to highlight 2 Olympic medal winners who call London, Ontario, their hometown, Tessa Virtue and Alex Kopacz. Both secured gold for Team Canada in Pyeongchang, and Londoners are beaming with pride. Alex Kopacz and his partner Justin Cripps tied the German team to win gold in 2-man bobsleigh. It was Alex's first Olympics, making the accomplishment that much more special. The performance by Tessa Virtue and Scott Moyer was nothing short of a masterpiece. From being flag bearers at the opening ceremony to helping Canada win a gold medal in the figure skating team event and securing gold in their final ice dance competition. Tessa and Scott are now the most decorated Olympic figure skaters in history. Though Scott's hometown of Ilderton is just minutes away, Londoners see him as one of our own. Mr. Speaker, all in this House share pride and admiration for Team Canada. Their dedication and heart is not forgotten and will always be celebrated. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
I rise today with a heavy heart to honour one of our recently passed former colleagues, Howard McCurdy. Howard, an Order of Canada recipient, was an impressive man who devoted his life to social justice with conviction and grace. Howard was the first African-Canadian New Democrat to be elected to sit in this House and second to be elected in Parliament in our history. He was a brilliant man, holding a PhD in microbiology and chemistry, published in over 50 times for his academic work. Social justice, however, was his true calling. He never stopped advocating for people and a more equal Canada. He was a leader in every sense and was a founding member of the National Black Coalition. Howard was an incredible orator, equal to anyone who was ever to sit in this chamber. He was an inspiration to many, a true icon of the Canadian civil rights movements. Black History Month reminds us that people committed to equality and justice like Howard McCurdy made Canada a better country. I offer sincere condolences to his family and friends and to all those affected by his passing from our Canadian House of Commons to the McCurdy family.
You're well done.
The honourable member for Bow River.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government has failed Canadian grain farmers with Bill C-49. According to AG Transportation Coalition, CNCP supplied only a combined 38% of hopper cars ordered in Grain Week 29. Week 29 was the worst week to date during 2017-28 grain year. This is a crisis for grain farmers, Mr. Speaker. They need to get their product to market and pay last year's bills. Guess who pays the penalty for delayed delivery for shipping the wheat at the port in Vancouver? Not the port facility, not the shipper, and of course not the railway. Mr. Speaker, it's the farmer who pays the penalty. We urge this government to split up their omnibus C-49 so we could pass the interswitching provisions quickly and protect the grain farmers. They failed to do so, and now Canadian grain farmers are feeling the consequences. The government needs to act quickly. We have winter in Canada every year, and they quit using that as an excuse. It's time to get it done, Mr. Speaker. Let's fix it for the grain farmers.
Honourable member for Fundy Royal.
Mr. Speaker, I stand today with the honourable member from Moncton, Riverview, Dieppe, to honour an incredible young woman who impacted lives around the world with her simple yet profound wish. Becca Schofield of Riverview, New Brunswick was just 15 when she began her battle with cancer. She found clarity, meaning, and purpose during her battle and had a simple wish to spread kindness in the world. Becca's inspiration led to a global online movement to do something to make someone smile and to share it with hashtag Becca Told Me To. Mr. Speaker, Becca touched lives of people's touched people's hearts, inspired acts of kindness from Riverview to Iqaluit to Kuwait. Humankind responded with thousands of acts of kindness. Last week we said goodbye to Becca, but her story does not end here. Becca reminded us and then showed us how easy it is to be kind to each other. To Darren, Anne, and Gabrielle, thank you for sharing her precious time here on earth with us. Know that Becca will be in our hearts forever.
Questions orales. Oral questions. The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Is it the Prime Minister's belief that the government of India conspired and manipulated events in order to ensure the attendance of Jasbel Atwal, a convicted terrorist, at a reception in India last week with the Prime Minister?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as the honourable member knows, I cannot discuss security details on the floor of the House, but I can tell her with absolute assurance that all Canadians can be assured that our police and our security agencies have done their job in relation to this visit, and they have done it very well.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader. Order.
According to multiple media outlets, a briefing was organized by the Prime Minister's office with a high-level national security advisor who suggested that the government of India's own intelligence service orchestrated the ability for Mr. Atwell to be in India at the same time as the Prime Minister's visit. This is a very serious allegation, Mr. Speaker. What proof does the Prime Minister have that the government of India did this?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I can say that the invitation that was issued to this particular individual, Mr. Atwal, should never have been issued, and indeed, as soon as it was discovered, it was rescinded by the Government of Canada.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
According to a Global News report, the PMO organized a briefing where one of the most senior members of the civil service advanced the following theory, and I quote, "The Jasbel Atwell, the terrorist invited by the Liberals to Mumbai, may have been planted there by the Indian government or maybe the Indian security agencies or perhaps by factions in the Indian government," unquote. The media did not make this up, Mr. Speaker. This briefing happened. The Prime Minister needs to tell Canadians if this allegations against the Indian government is believed to be true, and if so, where is the proof?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, again, I make the very strong point that all of the police and security officers and agencies of the Government of Canada in dealing with this issue have done their job in the national interest, and they have done it extraordinarily well.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Now, Mr. Speaker, I understand the Minister's answers, but last week we saw this big circus, the Liberal Party traveling across India, and we could see the Prime Minister's affection for terrorists. One was invited to a dinner. Now, I'm sure that the security officials in Canada did their job, but were they listened to? Why was that individual there?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, again, let me make the point. As soon as the invitation to this particular individual was discovered, it was rescinded by the Government of Canada. Let me also quote the headline from the India Times on Saturday, which said, quote, "Canada's tough stand on terror soothes India," end of quote.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Order, please. Order.
Order. The
Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, now, the Minister of Public Safety has provided some answers, but that's not what we want to hear. Since last Thursday, there's been a problem with this invitation issued to Mr. Atwell. The member for Surrey was blamed. Now, India, we want proof. If India issued the invitation, then it needs to be tabled in the House, the documentation going along with this. Otherwise, the Prime Minister has to accept responsibility and acknowledge he made a mistake by inviting that individual to the event. The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the record is clear. When this invitation was discovered, it was in fact rescinded by the Government of Canada. I would also note, Mr. Speaker, a quote from the Prime Minister of India. The talks, this is the quote, "The talks with the Prime Minister of Canada were fruitful. Our discussions focused on closer India-Canada cooperation in various sectors, including investment, trade, energy, and stronger people-to-people relations." End of quote.
L'honorable député de Rimouski.
The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques. As the Prime Minister got bogged down in his fiasco last week, a coalition dealing with tax havens attempted to meet with the minister. Unfortunately, this group, led by Vincent Gratton, among others, tried to meet with the agency and had to settle for senior officials. And they learned some interesting things. That the KPMG wasn't worried by the agency because they were doing cost assessment evaluations to determine whether or not they should be enforcing the Act. How can the minister defend this double standard in the justice system? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I was at the OCDE last week, Our government is committed to ensure the tax system is fair for all Canadians. We are cooperating with our international partners to fight tax evasion abroad by improving practices. This collaboration, as I've mentioned in the past, as I pointed out, I was at the OCDE last week. I announced that Canada would host a meeting for large corporations and the international sector, and tax experts from across the world will be invited to it. The question is, we have legislation and we want to know if it's being applied or not. That makes no sense.
Went scot-free for the Isle of Man scheme, while the U.S. KPMG officials were convicted of criminal charges for setting up a similar scheme. And while KPMG executives here were treated with kid gloves, we know that everyday Canadians get prosecuted to the full extent of the law. In tomorrow's budget, the government will have a chance to start fixing what's wrong with our tax system. Will we see measures to ensure that everyone is treated the same way, no matter the size of their bank account?
The Honourable Minister. The fight for tax evasion is access to data. We are making considerable progress in this regard thanks to our investments, thanks to our cooperation with our international partners. The agency now has access to better data, and this year, thanks to the implementation of common reports, we have access to information on banking accounts for Canadians abroad. This new standard will bring Canada and 120 countries to exchange data, something that was unthinkable 3 or 4 years ago, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie.
Mr. Speaker, I am sure the Prime Minister is glad to be home from his trip to India. Canadians were certainly getting tired of reading the bad international press. And while we all have a number of questions for him, those will go unanswered today, it seems. Yeah. But I'm wondering if somebody on that side might be able to explain what the whole point of the trip was. I mean, 8 days in India over...
The Minister of Science.
Mr. Speaker, it's disappointing the opposition can't recognize the importance of the Canada-India relationship. India's growing economy offers significant opportunities to strengthen Canada's middle class. The Prime Minister welcomed more than $1 billion in investments between Canadian and Indian companies, which will lead to the creation of almost 6,000 good, well-paying middle-class jobs for Canadians. We know our deep Canadian-India ties create high-quality jobs in both countries.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not $1 billion, it's 250 in Indian investments here that probably would have taken place at it regardless. Now, a huge delegation, 8 days for that, without talking about the diplomatic blunders. I really have trouble understanding what the government finds positive about the trip. We would have liked the Prime Minister, for example, to talk about trade, security in the region, tariffs on chickpeas and lentils that increased some 30 to 40% this year. So perhaps between two photos and his many costume changes, the Prime Minister may have raised these issues. Did the Prime Minister raise these issues on Canada's behalf?
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, it's disappointing to note that the opposition can't acknowledge the importance of the relations that exist between Canada and India.
Offers significant opportunities to strengthen Canada's middle class. The Prime Minister welcomed more than $1 billion in investment between Canadian and Indian companies, which will lead to the creation of good, well-paying middle-class jobs for Canadians. We know our deep ties between Canada and India create high-quality jobs.
The Honourable Member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, on his sightseeing trip last week, the Prime Minister saw a lot of India,
and it's clear after a week India had seen enough of our Prime Minister. After scrambling to lay the blame at the feet of many people, the Prime Minister's office trotted out the National Security Advisor to come up with a conspiracy campaign with respect to the trip. The Canadian press is reporting that the Prime Minister's office set up a briefing with the National Security Advisor to raise the conspiracy theories. Can the Prime Minister confirm this fact?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, let me again say that the security officers of the Government of Canada, all of our police and security agencies, have done their job in relation to this trip, and they have done it extremely well in the Canadian national interest.
The Honourable Member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, the Public Safety Minister is answering these questions, so the government knows how serious this security breach was. So my question is very simple. Can the Prime Minister confirm that his office set up a media briefing with the National Security Advisor where the Indian government conspiracy idea was floated?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, again, let me repeat for the benefit of the honourable gentleman that Canada has very strong, very proficient national security and police agencies. They are well trained in what they need to do to protect and advance the Canadian national interest, and they have done their jobs in relation to the trip to India. They've done that job exceedingly well to make sure that the best interests of Canadians are served and protected.
The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, during his family trip to India, paid for by Canadian taxpayers, the Prime Minister stirred up a great controversy by inviting a terrorist convicted of attempted murder to a state dinner. Initially, the Prime Minister blamed a Liberal member for having invited him. Then it was blame laid on the High Commissioner. And now, apparently, they're saying that the government might have slipped the invitation to the terrorist to damage relations with Canada. Is the Prime Minister really saying that India is attempting to sabotage relations between Canada and India?
Mr. Speaker, it's very clear. The government has said for a number of days, as soon as this invitation became identified, it was rescinded by the Government of Canada. That invitation should never have been issued in the first place.
The Honourable Member for Richmond, Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, this answer is ridiculous. The Prime Minister started by blaming his own Member of Parliament, who said that he showed a lack of judgment. And then they're talking about Indian government conspiracy. And then the security advisor, the National Security Advisor, was asked to get involved on the file. This is ridiculous. We really wonder where the Prime Minister is going with this. Is the Prime Minister saying that India wanted to sabotage relations with Canada? And if that's the case, then he should table the proof here in this House.
Public safety.
Mr. Speaker, the security interests of Canada are extremely important. Those interests need to rise above any partisan considerations. Mr. Speaker, the government fully respects all of our security officers and agencies to perform and behave in all circumstances in a completely non-partisan fashion, and that is what happened in this case.
Member for Thornhill.
Not good enough, Mr. Speaker. We're still looking for some straight answers on the Liberal blame game. First, the Prime Minister's office blames our High Commission in India. Then the PM blames a backbench Liberal MP. And then the Prime Minister forces the National Security Advisor to pitch a conspiracy theory to selected journalists, blaming India for trying to embarrass Canada by giving a visa to a convicted terrorist. Mr. Speaker, when will these Liberals give some straight and honest answers to Canadians?
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the insinuations and accusations from this member and other members of the opposition today are absolutely and utterly false. We respect our national security agencies and we respect their non-partisan public service. We respect in particular their ability to provide nonpartisan advice to the government. And that is indeed what happened in this case.
Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's office forced a nonpartisan public servant, the National Security Advisor, to plant unattributed stories in the mainstream media to try to influence and redirect stories about the Prime Minister's embarrassingly disastrous trip to India. Does the Prime Minister have any evidence at all of this conspiracy theory, or was this tale concocted to protect the Prime Minister's political interests?
Well said.
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman is wrong.
Honorable Député de Jonquière.
The honourable member for Jonquière.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Jonquière. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since it was implemented, the Phoenix Pay system has wreaked havoc in Quebec. More than 44 Quebec public servants suffered the consequences, the financial consequences, and it's far from over. This has been going on for 2 years. 2 years, Mr. Speaker, and this is unworthy of a government in the 21st century. It's time for the government to take up its responsibilities and to stop blaming the Conservatives. Can the Liberals ensure us that they will quickly find a solution and to offer apologies and compensation to people affected by their bad decisions? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, of course, we sincerely apologize to public servants for everything we've put them through as a government. And it is unacceptable that these public servants who continue to come to work and work on behalf of all Canadians are not being paid regularly. We are leaving no stone unturned in order to fix this problem. We are on it every day. Our hardworking public servants in Miramichi and in our satellite offices will be the people who fix this. And with all due respect, Mr. Speaker, it sincerely was the former Conservative government who did this.
The honourable member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Mr. Speaker, this government has to take responsibility for the Phoenix fiasco. It was their decision to proceed on February 28, 2016 that has led to this debacle. Dedicated public servants are losing their homes. Communities are being devastated. And this government should have done its due diligence. The Phoenix system in Australia was a fiasco, and Liberals didn't even bother to check. It took 4 months to clean up in Australia. Here it's been 2 years, and the government has done nothing. Why such profound lack of respect for Canada's public servants?
Minister of Public Services and Procurement.
Mr. Speaker, we certainly have the utmost respect for our public servants, certainly more than the previous government, that's for sure. Mr. Speaker, we had a choice in February of 2016, and let me tell you what that was. A choice between the new system or no system. The former previous Conservative government had fired compensation advisors, had decommissioned the former system, and as an aside, Mr. Speaker, we were being advised that it was okay by our officials to proceed. Thank you.
Here. Honourable members seem to have forgotten the rule against interruptions. I have to remind them of that and ask them to listen despite what they may or may not like and what they hear. I'm sure members on all sides have things they don't like, but most on all sides are able to control themselves. The honourable member for Brantford-Brant.
August 24th, 2015, the Prime Minister made this pledge to veterans. Quote, "If I earn the right to serve this country as your Prime Minister, no veteran will be forced to fight their own government for the support and compensation they have earned." That was when he was trying to get elected. Now that he's in power, the Prime Minister says veterans are asking for too much. But he has plenty of money for his pet projects, including a disastrous trip to India. Will the Prime Minister do the honourable thing and quit breaking his promise to veterans?
Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
An increased pain and suffering award, an increased income replacement, increased estate exemption for veterans' funerals and bureau, an education benefit of up to $80,000 that will come in with this new budget, redesigned career transition, a recognition benefit for caregivers, a Center for Excellence for PTSD, 460 more staff, hired, 10 offices, a pension for life. This Prime Minister has kept his promises, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Honourable member for Rainsford, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, Canadian veterans are tired of being left in the cold by a Prime Minister who can't spend a dime on them but has money to burn on luxury travel. Right. Canadian veteran Roger Perot wants the Prime Minister to tell him why he has $10.5 million for Omar Khadr but can't not a crumb for the soldiers who were critically injured by roadside bombs in the line of duty.
Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Firstly, I want to congratulate the honourable member on winning her nomination. And
we're happy to.
And as everybody in this House knows, I also very much welcome the opportunity at any instance to compare the record of this government in 2 years compared to the record of the past or previous government. In fact, I have to ask, Mr. Speaker, I commend the other side for the vim and vigor that they bring to this debate. I only ask, where was it for 10 years?
The honourable member for Beauport-Limoilou.
Benefits. That's the story they don't want to tell.
Today, the Prime Minister has an excellent opportunity to show veterans that he still respects them. And this evening, he can vote in favour of our opposition motion, Mr. Speaker. A Prime Minister simply can't claim that veterans are asking for too much when his own government is making so many exaggerated and irresponsible expenditures day in and day out. Will he vote in favour of this motion this evening? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, for everything that the Conservatives have taken away over 10 years, in 2 years we have replaced. In 2 years we have made better. An increased pain and suffering award. A pension for life. An education benefit of up to $80,000. I would be happy to occupy more of this House's time with the accomplishments of this government in 2 years.
Honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Whoa. Later today, Liberal caucus members, including some who are veterans, will vote on a motion asking the Prime Minister to apologize to veterans and live up to his campaign promises. 4 weeks ago, a veteran in Edmonton said, "I was prepared to be killed in action. What I wasn't prepared for, Mr. Prime Minister, is Canada turning its back on me." The Prime Minister's response that veterans are asking for more than he can give them right now was appalling. Actually, what veterans are asking for, Mr. Prime Minister, is what you promised them. Will the Liberals support this motion, yes or no?
The member for Barrie Innisfil is an experienced member, and I'm sure knows that in this House we direct our comments to the Chair, and we don't use the word you, unless, of course, we're referring to the Speaker, which I don't think he was in this case. I'm sure it is. The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs is rising to answer.
Mr. Speaker, the diagnosis is in and the amnesia has set in very, very thick. 10 years, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to assume that the honourable member forgets the protests that occurred over 10 years, protesting this government. Mr. Speaker, if they had gotten it done, it would have gotten done. It didn't get done. We're doing it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
Mr. Speaker, the pulp and paper industry on Vancouver Island is facing a severe crisis from grossly unfair U.S. trade practices. The U.S. Department of Commerce demanded that Catalyst Paper pay a 6% countervailing duty, and more anti-dumping duties are expected in 2 weeks. These unfair duties could cripple this industry and put hundreds of good-paying families supporting jobs on Vancouver Island at risk, and possibly thousands more indirectly. What is this Liberal government going to do to stand up to unfair U.S. trade practices?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Canada-U.S. Relations.
Speaker, the Department of Commerce decision on supercalendered paper did not comply with the NAFTA panel's decision. We have therefore requested that a NAFTA panel review the determination by the Department of Commerce, and we will be challenging this decision on the World Trade Organization rules. We will always defend our industry and its workers against protectionist trade practices. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Mr. Speaker, from softwood lumber to supply management system, the United States is attacking our Canadian industries. In January, the U.S. Department of Trade decided to levy countervailing duties of up to 10% on imports of Canadian paper, and more anti-dumping duties are expected next month. Quebec is one of the main producers of pulp and paper in the world, including in Estrie. Will the government stand up to defend the thousands of jobs in this industry?
The Parliamentary Secretary of Canada-U.S. Relations. The decision of the U.S. Department of Trade is not in line with the NAFTA Special Working Group. That is why we have asked for the special group to review the Department of Trade's decision as soon as possible. We contest this decision before the WTO. We will always vigorously defend this industry and its workers against protectionist policies.
The Honourable Member for Montarville. Mr. Speaker, in my riding of Montarville, we know how important tourism is for the economy. For example, Mount St. Bruno's Park received 750,000 visitors, and the St. Bruno Ski House received 300,000 visitors as Canadians and visitors from around the globe celebrated Canada's 150th.
Understanding that Quebec province alone, we set a new record of almost 3.1 million. Can the Minister of Small Business and Tourism update this House on last year's record-setting tourism year?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as my colleague from Montarville said, I'm very proud to announce that
last year was the best year for Canadian tourism. Over 20 million visitors came, and there were an international level of international visitors.
Operators, most of which are small businesses, and to the 1.8 million Canadians who work in the tourism sector. Mr. Speaker, this year we celebrate the Canada-China Year of Tourism, and I am certain this amazing news will continue for the tourism industry and for Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Kamloops, Thompson, Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, last June I asked the Prime Minister why he approved En Bang's billion-dollar takeover of BC care homes. Quote, if the company dissolves, who will gain control of our seniors' care facilities? Are seniors in my riding going to find out that their landlord is the People's Republic of China? Yes. On Friday, we learned the answer. It's yes. China, Communist China, is now the landlord. How could they ever have thought that this was an acceptable outcome for our seniors? How will the Minister explain this mess to our vulnerable seniors?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Economic Development.
Speaker, as we do with all investments under the ICA, we're actively monitoring Cedar Tree because they have, Mr. Speaker, made a number of commitments in their takeover of the seniors' home. We are monitoring those commitments. Our officials remain closely engaged with Cedar Tree, the Canadian operator of the homes, and to verify that their investment continues to be made under the conditions under which they were allowed to do it. Due to confidentiality provisions, Mr. Speaker, on the Investment Canada Act, I cannot comment further than that.
Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Ongbong Insurance is a massive Chinese corporation that is mired in corruption and scandal. Conservatives warned this Liberal government not to allow Ongbong to buy up BC senior homes, but they rubber-stamped the sale anyways. Now the Chinese government has seized control of the company. That means that the communist regime in China will now be collecting rent checks from BC seniors. When will this government apologize for allowing that to happen and for allowing communist China to become the landlords of BC's vulnerable seniors?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, while the opposition might engage in scare tactics and fearmonger, let's talk about the facts. The day-to-day operations of the seniors' home remain under the control of Cedar Tree, Mr. Speaker. They continue to be managed by Retirement Concepts, the same management that was there before. The residents continue to be subject to the same provincial health regulations that they have always been subject to. The residents and healthcare workers will continue to be protected under the same legislation and regulations as before. As I have said before, as we have said before, Mr. Speaker, we continue to actively monitor Cedar Tree and their compliance to their legal obligations.
The honourable member for Mégantic-l'Érable. Mr. Speaker, while the Prime Minister and 6 of his ministers went on a tour of India, grain farmers in the West experienced difficulties because the Liberals decided to play politics instead of managing affairs of state. They refused to split Bill C-49. A whole harvest cannot be shipped by train for ideological reasons, and the Minister of Agriculture has done absolutely nothing. When will the Prime Minister finally play his role of Prime Minister and act to make sure that grain farmers in Canada have access to markets and can sell their harvests? The Honourable Minister of Transportation. We are there for grain farmers here in Canada, unlike the former government, which for 10 years did absolutely nothing except to set up a temporary measure. We care about grain farmers, and that's why we prepared Bill C-49, and I hope that the other House will pass this bill as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, we had that provision in place so we wouldn't be facing the crisis that we're facing right now. Grain farmers are facing a crippling rail backlog because the Liberals ignored our advice to pass a separate grain transportation bill. Now Canadian farmers are literally paying the consequences for Liberal inaction. The sunsetting of important provisions like extended interswitching, a rail company meeting just 17% of its grain car orders, and now demurrage costs are being passed directly to producers. Will the Liberals commit to reinstating extending interswitching immediately so our Canadian farmers can get their product to market?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, let me correct the honourable member. For 10 years, that previous government did absolutely nothing for the farmers in this country except to put in place a Band-Aid temporary bill. We put in place Bill C-49 to give our farmers and shippers and railways a modern freight rail legislation. We certainly hope that the other chamber is going to pass this bill as quickly as possible, and I would encourage my fellow member across the way to encourage his fellow Conservatives to pass the bill as quickly as possible.
An honourable member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
Tina Fontaine was 15 years old. Her 72-pound body found in the Red River. She was brutally murdered. And the system failed her every step of the way, including seeking justice. Canadians are heartbroken. There's no justice for Tina. But this isn't the first time Canada's justice system has failed Indigenous women and girls. How can families have any hope in the face of another heartbreaking injustice for Indigenous women and girls?
The Honourable Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Mr. Speaker, our hearts go out to deepest sympathies to the family, the friends, and the whole community of Tina Fontaine. Tina's death put a face to the ongoing tragedy of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Her story underscores the important work now being done by the National Inquiry. The families and all Canadians need answers to the systemic and institutional failures that led to her murder and far too many other Indigenous women. We can and must do better.
The honourable member for Hamilton Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, last week I took our pension theft campaign to town halls throughout British Columbia, talking to people about their pension. One thing that was clear is that people are worried. People are worried that they won't have enough to live on in their retirement. They were shocked the Liberals continue to allow big companies to claim bankruptcy and shortchange their pensions. They want their government to do more than monitor the situation. They want this government to fix it. When will the Liberals actually come to the table with real solutions to end pension theft?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, our heart goes out to all those affected by the closure of Sears. We note that we are monitoring this situation. The regulation of the Sears pension is governed by the province of Ontario. and we are following that. We have done outreach with Sears employees across Canada. And, Mr. Speaker, we are open to listening to any good proposition that comes forward. We are working towards, hopefully, improving the situation for the pensioners in the future.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 3 years ago, the Prime Minister put forward an unprecedented financial theory that a budget balances itself. It is clear that since these people have been in place, this ridiculous theory has yet to get off the ground. On the eve of the budget, can someone in this government, if not the Prime Minister, get up and tell us if, yes or no, we're going to come back to balanced budgets, or if, on the contrary, the government is going to continue to spend billions of dollars on things such as last week's trip to India, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. With all the respect I have for my colleagues, and I have a great deal, I don't think he's understood the theory. When growth is there, it is easy to achieve balanced budgets. And that's what the FM, the International Monetary Fund, encourages. We have observed over the last 2 years that thanks to careful investment and by being financially responsible, our debt to GDP ratio continues to go down. We've created hundreds of thousands of jobs. We have the strongest rate of growth in the G7.
There they go again, Mr. Speaker. Last election, they promised that the coming fiscal year would have a deficit of just $6 billion. But when we point out that they missed their last deficit targets by between 80 and 100%, they say, don't worry, the international bankers are very happy with our policy. Well, of course they are. They're getting all the interest payments on that debt that middle-class taxpayers have to pay in return for nothing. Will they keep their promise and keep the deficit below $6 billion in tomorrow's budget?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I can reassure the member as well as all Canadians that we've always been very fiscally responsible, making sure that our debt-to-GDP ratio remains firmly on a downward track, and it will be at its lowest level in close to 40 years. We're in the best fiscal position in the G7. However, in 2015, Mr. Speaker, Canadians had a choice between the failed austerity policies of the Conservatives, which were also in the NDP platform, with a progressive agenda that invests in communities, in infrastructure, and in reducing inequalities in this country, and the results speak for themselves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lots of jobs. Honourable Member for Carleton.
They do speak for themselves, Mr. Speaker. The wealthiest 1% are paying $1 billion less. The wealthy lenders are getting billions of dollars more in interest payments from Canadian taxpayers. And who's paying more? 80% of middle-class taxpayers are paying higher taxes today than when this Prime Minister took office. Will this government reverse course, give a break to the middle class for a change, and stop handing our money off to the wealthy international bankers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I understand the member opposite is eager to see what's in the budget. He'll have to wait until tomorrow, but I can assure him that we'll continue on a path to favour growth in this country, to work for the middle class like we've done when we reduced taxes for 9 million Canadians, and when we introduced a Canada Child benefit that's lifting 300,000 kids out of poverty with a more progressive approach, something that they failed to do in the decade they were in power. We have a record to be proud of, and I look forward to tomorrow's budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Whether you are a young person going to university or college for the first time, or a Canadian looking to improve your skills or start a new career, access to affordable post-secondary studies is essential.
Direct role in strengthening our middle class and helping everyone working hard to join it. Could the minister update this House on what our government is doing to ensure more Canadians can afford to pursue post-secondary education?
Honourable Minister of Employment.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank my colleague for her question.
depend on Canadians of all ages getting the experience and the education that they need to succeed. So that's why we've increased the amount of support for Canada Student Grants by 50%. We've ensured that no graduate who applies will have to repay their Canada student loan until they're earning at least $25,000 per year. We've expanded eligibility for Canada Student Grants and loans for part-time students and students with dependent children. And recently we've launched Skills Boost to give adult learners the support that they need to succeed in the workplace. By making post-secondary education more affordable for everyone, all Canadians will have that chance.
Member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, politicians from Newfoundland and Labrador, including the Liberal Member of Parliament for Bonavista, Bear Trinity, are concerned about the expropriation of the surf clam quota. Provincial Fisheries Minister Jerry Byrne says it's a loss to Newfoundland and Labrador worth $100 million. Can the Minister of Fisheries confirm how many jobs his decision will cost Newfoundland and Labrador?
Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, we're very proud of a process that we began last September to include Indigenous communities in this very valuable offshore fishery. I would point out, Mr. Speaker, that the process to add a new entrant to this fishery was begun by the previous Conservative government in 2014 and 2015, except they forgot to include Indigenous communities in that process. So, Mr. Speaker, we're convinced that the decision that we took last week is good for the industry, it's good for the benefits for Indigenous communities, and it will be good for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador and Atlantic Canada as well.
The Honourable Member for Longueuil, Saint-Hubert. Mr. Speaker, one day before the budget, we hope that the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Heritage have spoken with each other. Not only has the Minister of Heritage still not answered the letter from Quebec's Minister of Culture sent in October, it would seem that there's nothing in the budget to finally ask web giants to do their fair share. The Liberals are going to continue to give tax credits to Canadian businesses that by advertising on these platforms. It will be almost 6 months now that the Minister of Heritage has been hearing concerns about the taxation of web giants. When is something actually going to happen? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that the sector for media is facing significant challenges. That is why we have committed to updating policies to ensure that they can deal with digital challenges. The Minister has been clear. We made a promise and we will keep it. Over the longer term, we need to develop an overarching strategy to deal with digital platforms. We will not do things piecemeal. The Honourable Member for Nickel Belt. Mr. Speaker, over the weekend, the Pyeongchang Olympic Games ended in South Korea. Like many of you, I had the opportunity to watch several events where our athletes performed brilliantly among the best in the world.
It's very emotional, and while they host great moments, I stood with each other as we stood with pride for the contribution that all of our Olympic athletes have made and the Canada medal count. Can the Minister of Sports and Persons with Disabilities tell us about Canada's success in South Korea?
Honourable Minister.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Nous avons eu droit.
Mr. Speaker, we saw some spectacular performances from our teams at the Pyeongchang Games. This is our best performance with 29 medals.
We have experienced countless beautiful stories and moments at those games that make us proud to be Canadian. But Team Canada's success at Pyeongchang does not stop there. On March 8th, the adventure continues with the start of the Paralympic Games. Let's keep shouting, "Go Canada, go!"
Honourable Member for North Okanagan-Shuswap.
Mr. Speaker, last week the Liberal government awarded a quota to harvest Arctic surf clams to a company who's a brother of a Liberal MP. This decision is worth millions for the company that received the quota. Was the Minister of Fisheries aware that he awarded a benefit worth millions of dollars to the brother of one of his Liberal colleagues?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, what we were aware of is a valuable resource that is a public resource that belongs to the people of Canada and could be better shared with Indigenous communities in Atlantic Canada and in Quebec. And, Mr. Speaker, we began an open and transparent process in September, and after 8 weeks, we were really pleased to have received 9 proposals, which were carefully studied by the department. And, Mr. Speaker, we selected the proposal that will bring the greatest economic benefit to Indigenous communities and to the people of Atlantic Canada and Quebec, and we're proud of that process and we're proud of the decision.
The Honourable Member for Pierre-Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's trip to India was nothing more than a masquerade. 8 days of tourism, little diplomatic work, no significant contracts during this visit. Just an opportunity to take more nice pictures and to parade around in traditional dress to the great dismay of India's nation. These politics look an awful lot like pandering for votes. Can the Prime Minister tell us how much his futile trip cost, which was paid in part by Quebec's taxpayers? The Honourable Minister of Science.
Opposition, we know it is important to Canadians that we deliver on the world stage. While we were in India, we announced more than $1 billion in two-way investment, $7.9 million to Grand Challenges Canada in support of women's empowerment, health and rights, $11.5 million to the Right Start initiative to empower the world's poorest women and girls. Mr. Speaker, if the opposition wants to start criticizing on costs, they better first check their own record.
La Pointe-Lille.
The Honourable Member for La Pointe-Lille. When the Prime Minister dresses up to play to the crowd, it doesn't give the impression that he is a government leader that is serious and credible. But to insinuate that Quebec's movement for independence, which is both democratic and peaceful, is synonymous with violence, sullies at an international level the reputation of Quebec and the millions of Quebec men and women who support this project for freedom. Will the Prime Minister apologize for the disgraceful, out-of-line comments that were attributed to him? The Honourable Minister of Transportation. Like the Prime Minister said himself, those comments are false. He never said any such thing. On the contrary, the Prime Minister has always been clear when it comes to Quebec. Luckily, in Canada, we respect diversity. And yes, the differences of opinion. But we do that with respect and we do it peacefully.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. In the 1950s, Inuit families were split up and forcibly relocated to the shores of Resolute Bay and Grise Fjord in my riding. Recognizing the mistakes in our past is difficult. However, I believe that these tragic acts should serve as a lesson and should never be forgotten or repeated. Canada's National Historic Sites are areas that tell a unique story of our history. My question is, will the Minister consider recommending the sites where people were dropped off in Resolute Bay and Grise Fjord as National Historic Sites? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you very much to the member of Nunavut for his question. Our government is committed to working respectfully with Indigenous peoples to ensure national heritage places recognize Indigenous traditions, cultures, history, and contributions to Canada, and to fully implementing the Call to Action 79 from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We would welcome a nomination to the Historic Sites and Monuments Board of Canada to designate Resolute Bay and Grise Fjord as a National Historic Site. Canada's National Historic Sites and National Historic designations reflect the rich and varied heritage of our nation. Thank you.
The Honourable Member rises on a point of order. Once again, I came back with more documents for the Parliamentary Secretary for Public Works, who has asked us for proof that the Phoenix system was not ready. And this time, I would like to add a document that has the minutes of a conference call that says there are still outstanding technical issues.
50% fail of UAT, EDP issues are now occurring, business transformation gaps, blackout impacts, lack of morale and capacity at pay centers. Once again, Mr. Speaker, I would ask for not debate, unanimous consent to provide that proof to the Parliamentary Secretary.
Does the honourable member have unanimous consent? There's no unanimous consent. Tabling of documents.